Hey guys, tonight we're pulling off the highway, cutting the headlights, and checking into one of the strangest, most quietly disreputable, and most genuinely American businesses ever to plant a neon sign at the edge of a road, the Independent Roadside Motel. Not the Holiday Inn, not the Marriott Rewards points and the complimentary breakfast waffle iron. The original version, the one with the neon sign, the chenille bedspread, and a mattress that had quietly formed opinions about the human body. If slow, specific, faintly suspicious history is the sort of thing that puts you under, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if drifting off to deadpan Americana with mild criminal undertones sounds like a good night to you. And to whoever suggested this one, you know who you are, and yes, I wrote your name in the register under a false address and a car you don't own. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always checkout dodging 3 a.m. somewhere, which, historically speaking, is the exact hour the roadside motel was built to absorb. Go ahead and dim the lights, switch the fan on so the room hums a little, and settle in under the blanket. Maybe leave one leg out, in case the valley in the mattress shifts in the night. Have you ever wondered what it really took to exist in America in 1953 with nothing but a car, a highway, and $6? What happened in the room directly next to yours, given that the wall between you was basically decorative? Could you survive a guest registry that asked for your real name but absolutely did not require it? Why did J. Edgar Hoover personally have opinions about motor courts? The ice machine, why is it always times loud? And why at midnight specifically? Did the paper wrapper on the drinking glass actually protect you from anything? Or was it just the glass wearing a small hat? And what exactly were the travelling salesmen keeping in the mini-fridge that the owner had agreed, without further discussion, to keep cold? Congratulations, you've just woken up in a 1-2 unit motor court somewhere outside Amarillo, Texas. 1953. The neon is buzzing red and turquoise outside your window. The room smells like Clorox, synthetic carpet, and someone else's cigarette making its way through a wall that has clearly never taken its job seriously. Good luck. You live 40 feet from people you have never met. The motel office connects to your residence through a single door, and on the other side of that door are 11 rooms of strangers who arrived after dark and will be gone before you finish your coffee. You are the owner. You are also the front desk, the housekeeper, the groundskeeper, and the night clerk. There is no one to call when something goes wrong at 2 in the morning, because the someone is you, and you are already awake. Let's talk about what you actually do all day. You wake up at 7, strip 11 sets of sheets, remake 11 beds with the chenille spreads tucked at hospital corner angles, scrub 11 bathtubs, wipe 11 mirrors, and replace 11 paper-wrapped glasses on 11 bathroom shelves. The glasses wear little paper hats now. This is not an upgrade, it's a response. By 9, you're back in the office, where the register sits open on the counter. Guests are required by law to write their real name, home address, and license plate number. They write whatever occurs to them. You don't check. Nobody checks. The register is essentially a guest book at a wedding where half the attendees are using pseudonyms, except the wedding is a $4 room on US. 40 and the pseudonym is usually something like R. Johnson, Springfield. Meanwhile, a man named Earl has called ahead. Earl comes through every Tuesday, has room 7, takes a full staff from the case in your back refrigerator, and leaves exact change on the counter without being asked. Earl has been doing this since 1949. Earl is not exactly a guest. Earl is infrastructure. You keep his preferred beer cold at a weekly rate that works out to roughly the cost of not having to relearn somebody's habits from scratch. You've known since 1951 that Earl takes his eggs over easy. The property nets between $8,000 and $15,000 a year. That's the range for a well-run 20-unit operation, and yours has 18, so you're doing the math constantly. A good summer on a tourist route and you're comfortable. A bad winter with highway rerouting and you're watching the vacancy sign more than your children. The sign itself is a small drama. Vacancy glows in turquoise neon, readable from 60 miles an hour, which is the entire point. When you fill up, the red NO clicks on in front of it. The NO has a different sound than the rest of the sign. Lower, more final. The job is steady, thankless, and oddly hypnotic. Your husband Gerald handles the minor plumbing. Gerald's approach to minor plumbing is to stand in front of it for several minutes holding a wrench, on the theory that the pipe will fix itself if observed long enough. Sometimes it does. Mostly you call someone by morning. Of course, this is also your home. Your children eat breakfast 12 feet from where strangers sleep. Your kitchen shares a wall with room 1, and room 1's occupant last Tuesday had a television on until midnight, an argument at 12:30, and what you've chosen to classify as a disagreement with the furniture at 1. The walls are plaster over lath. They are not thick. They pass sound the way a window screen passes mosquitoes, technically a barrier, functionally a suggestion. The room you rent costs $4 on a weeknight, $5 on a Friday. That's roughly $45 in today's money for a room that is 250 square feet of linoleum, chenille, and an inner spring mattress that has quietly given up in the middle. Guests say nothing about it. They save their complaints for the ice machine outside, which hums all night and drops cubes into a metal tray at intervals timed specifically to interrupt the lightest stage of sleep. You've stopped hearing it. Your guests have not. A car pulls in off the highway and stops in front of the office, headlights swinging across your window. You set down whatever you are holding and walk to the counter, because a stopped car means a guest, and a guest means the transaction that pays for everything. You have maybe 5 minutes to complete it. The driver wants a room, a price, and a key in that order, and he wants to be horizontal as soon as possible. Payment comes first. It always comes first. The register sits open on the counter. It's a hardbound ledger, the kind that smells faintly of ink and other people's decisions. You slide it toward him. He writes a name, an address, a license plate number. The name is probably his. The address is probably somewhere real. Probably. Innkeeper law requires him to be truthful. An enforcement of innkeeper law has never once happened in this county, and both of you know it. He prints the letters carefully, like a man composing a note that will never be read. It won't be. The room rate is $4.50, which covers the room, the towels, and whatever the previous guest left behind in the bathroom. Spiritually speaking, you take the cash. You don't have a credit card machine because it's 1953 and that particular rectangle of anxiety hasn't been widely popularized yet. Cash in advance is the policy. The policy doesn't require a sign. Everyone knows. Now comes the key. It arrives on a fob roughly the size of a small serving spatula, stamped with the property name and the room number in raised metal letters. The fob is not decorative. The fob is a message. It says, "You will notice this in your pocket. You will feel it at the restaurant tomorrow morning. You will not accidentally drive to Nevada with room 7. The key is cold. It always runs slightly cold, kept in a little wooden box behind the counter that no one has ever locked. Marjorie, who handles the late check-ins when you've been on your feet since 6, holds the fob out with 2 fingers and sets it on the counter rather than handing it directly over. She's done this for 11 years. She doesn't know why she started. She does it every time. Let's talk about what you tell him. You tell him where the ice machine is, which is the corridor between rooms 9 and 10, and that it hums continuously but drops cubes only when it decides to, with no pattern you've identified after 4 years of listening to it. You tell him the diner opens at 6. You tell him checkout is 11. That's the whole speech. 30 seconds. Some guests nod. Some guests are already walking. The exchange is quick, wordless, and final. The architecture handles the rest. His car is already parked directly in front of room 7. That's the design. The entire design. The thing that makes this a motel and not a hotel. And the door is 12 feet from his bumper. No lobby to cross. No elevator to wait for. No bellman to tip, which is a relief to both of you. He lets himself in, and 2 minutes later his light is on, and then his TV is on, and then it's quiet except for the television. Which is not quiet at all, but counts as quiet in this business. You walk back to the office and make a mark in the register. 16 of 18 units occupied. 2 empty rooms earning nothing, which is a specific type of math that keeps you awake some nights. The NO hasn't clicked on in front of vacancy yet. You leave it. The night's not over, and the highway outside is still moving. Headlights coming and going in both directions. Some of them slowing, most of them not. You're the ones who slow down. You slide the register across the counter and hand the guest a pen. The rules require him to write his full name, his home address, and the make, model, and license number of the car parked outside. Most states put this requirement into law, and most states attach a penalty for getting it wrong. You watch him write. You will not check a single word of it, and he knows you will not check, and the two of you proceed through the ritual anyway, because the ritual is the point. The name on the register tonight is RJ. Wilson, it is always R.J. Wilson, or some close relative of R.J. Wilson, a man of no fixed address, driving a Ford, here on business that is no one's concern. The address is a street number in a city plausible enough to not invite questions. The license plate is whatever he wrote. You fold the register back toward your side of the counter and note the room. 12. You don't ask about the license plate. The car is right outside. You both know this. Let's talk about what the register actually is. It's not a security document. It's a ledger of intentions. The innkeeper law that requires it dates back to when innkeepers were legally responsible for the safety of guests and their goods, which made sense when guests arrived on horseback and might be carrying something worth stealing. In 1953, the guests arrive in a Buick and are carrying a sample case and a conscience of varying quality. The law survived the horse. The enforcement did not. A guest named Gerald Foss, actually named Gerald Foss, which is almost worse, checks in every Tuesday, drives a green Studebaker you could identify from the highway, and writes a different city of origin each week. Des Moines, Peoria, Columbus. You've noticed. Gerald has noticed that you've noticed. Gerald writes Davenport anyway, with the careful cursive of a man who has given this some thought, and slides the pen back across the counter with 2 fingers. The register has a concept of fiction. Gerald has made his peace with it. Of course, the anonymity isn't accidental. The park at your door layout means no lobby, no bellman, no one who sees you walk from the lot to the room at 11:30 with someone who is not your wife. The car faces the door faces away from the road, the curtains are already closed. This is not a design flaw. It's closer to a feature that nobody discussed at the planning meeting because the planning meeting was just one man with a pencil and a construction loan. A 1952 Harris poll found 43% of American adults associated motels with immoral activity. The other 57% presumably found theirs elsewhere and didn't need the parking. The motel didn't create the behavior. It just offered a door that closed and a checkout time of 11. The register fills slowly across a season. Some entries are careful, practiced, legible. Some are a single initial and a scrawl. One man writes his real name in full, with his real address, including apartment number, in small, neat block letters, as though accuracy is the bravest thing he can offer. Maybe it is. You don't comment. You set the fob on the counter the way Marjorie taught you. Room 7. Ice machines down the walk on the left. Checkouts at 11. The penalty for a false entry is technically a misdemeanor in several states. No one has ever been charged. The register itself knows this. It sits on the counter every night with the patience of an object that has long since stopped expecting anything from the people who use it. You reach to the pegboard behind you, take down a key, and slide it across the counter attached to a fob the size of a small shoe. The fob is stamped with the room number and the name of the motel, and it is heavy enough to be uncomfortable in a trouser pocket. This is deliberate. A guest who can feel the key all evening is a guest who remembers to leave it behind. And a key that comes back is a key you do not have to recut. The fob is your first piece of infrastructure. It is also your only piece of infrastructure. There's no doorman on the other end, no bellhop, no lobby you'll ever see again after this moment. The guest takes the key, walks to the door, and the transaction between you is complete. Whatever happens next happens in a room you can't see from the office window, which is something you have made your peace with. Let's talk about the room itself. 250 square feet, give or take a closet. A double bed with a chenille bedspread in a colour that used to be green. The mattress has a valley down the centre. Not a dip, a valley. Geologically significant. Worn there by years of guests who all drifted to the same spot by midnight. The dresser has 3 drawers, 2 of which open without drama. A chair sits in the corner doing very little. The lamp on the bedside table is the most reliable object in the room. It turns on every time. The bathroom is where the motel makes its case. There's a bar of soap in a paper wrapper, a bath towel folded into a rough approximation of a rectangle, and a drinking glass sitting upside down on a paper square. The paper square is new. The glass didn't change. The wrapper is doing what it can. The smell is Clorox, starch, and something warm underneath that's either the carpet adhesive or the previous decade. Not bad, not good. Aggressively present, the way a smell is when it has been there long enough to stop apologizing. This is where Donna Schaefer enters the picture. She's the owner's wife And at 9 every morning she moves through the vacated rooms with a caddy of supplies and the expression of a woman who has seen everything and filed it under "not my business." She strips the bed, resets the towels, turns the glass upside down on its paper square. She replaces the soap if it's been used past a certain point she has privately established. She checks behind the toilet, which is a task the room does not thank her for. On the dresser she sometimes finds a Benzedrine wrapper, or 2, or 5. She drops them in the bin. She doesn't mention it at dinner. The caddy rolls to the next door. The sign out front says vacancy in red letters tall enough to read at 60 miles an hour, and your job, several times a night, is to decide whether that word is still true. When the last room goes, you walk out to the switch and light up the small no that sits in front of it. When a guest checks out early or a reservation fails to arrive, you turn the no back off. The decision sounds simple. The decision controls whether the next car slows down or keeps driving. The sign itself is neon, red mostly, sometimes yellow or turquoise, and it buzzes at a frequency that becomes invisible by the end of the first week. You stop hearing it the way you stop hearing the refrigerator. It hums. It clicks when the temperature drops. Occasionally it flickers on the R in a way that reads as existential rather than electrical. And you have a name for the repair guy and you know he won't come until Thursday. Let's talk about the mechanics of a full house. 20 units means 20 cars, and when car 20 pulls in and you hand over the last fob, you've done your job. You walk to the road-facing switch panel, which is mounted on the exterior wall next to the office window at a height that assumes you are 5 feet 9, and you click the NO to life. The red no and the red vacancy glow together for a moment. Then you go back inside and answer the phone because someone is already calling. The caller wants to know if you have a room. You tell them no. They ask if you're sure. You tell them you're sure. They ask if you'll have one later. You tell them possibly. They ask you to hold it. You tell them that's not how this works. The whole exchange takes 90 seconds and ends without resolution. This happens 4 or 5 times on a Good Friday. Meanwhile, the cars that pass the lit no make a calculation at 60 miles per hour, which is to say, they make it in about 2 seconds, and they either accept it and keep driving, or they slow down on some instinct that the sign is wrong, that surely a place this size has something. Some of them pull in anyway. Harold Fitch out of Tulsa pulls in anyway. He rolls down his window and says he just needs a few hours, not even a full night, which is a sentence that means several things, and you've learned to assess which one he means by whether he's alone. Tonight he's alone. You tell him the NO means no. He drives on. The register sits open on the desk, a lined ledger, not a computer, not a form, just a book, and every guest has filled in a name they may or may not own. You are not a detective. The register is not evidence. It's more like a social contract everyone has quietly agreed not to enforce, the honor system, except the honor is optional. The cash goes into a metal box that lives under the counter and is not a safe. It just lives under the counter. Payment is in advance, always. A $4 room requires $4 before the key leaves your hand. This is not a policy you post anywhere. It's simply understood, the way the fob size is understood, the way the NO clicking on is understood. By 10 at night, the diner next door has gone quiet, and the ice machine out by Unit 7 is doing what it does. A low industrial hum interrupted every few minutes by the crash of a new cycle dropping cubes into the tray, loud enough to travel through the parking lot like a small announcement. Guests carry their metal buckets out in bare feet across the concrete, squinting in the overhead light. The ice machine is technically available to all guests. In practice, it belongs to whoever got there first, and it has the institutional confidence of something that knows this about itself. You turn the office light down around 11. Not off, down. The vacancy sign stays lit unless the no is on. The sign is the business. The sign is always working even when you aren't, pulling in the last car of the night from whatever's still moving on the highway, promising a bed and a tub and a door that locks and nothing more than that. A guest pulls out of his space at 9 in the morning, and the moment his car clears the lot, the room he left becomes your problem. You have a clean towel over your shoulder and a bucket in your hand, and you have somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes to make the room look as though no human being has ever slept in it. The bed is stripped first. Everything else follows from the bed. By checkout, you will do this 11 times, and tomorrow you will do it again. The mattress has an opinion about this. It has sagged in the center over several hundred guests, and no amount of turning corrects it for long. You flip it anyway. You tuck the bottom sheet so tight the corners could hold a small thesis. The chenille spread goes on last, smoothed out with both hands, and for about 4 hours it will look exactly like a photograph of itself before the next guest sits on the edge and ruins it immediately. Let's talk about the bathroom. It's not a bathroom. It's a tub, a toilet, a pedestal sink, and a question about who was here before you. The smell of Lysol arrives first and stays after you leave, sharp, phenolic, slightly threatening, the olfactory equivalent of a warning label. You wipe the tub, replace the soap, and unwrap 2 paper-wrapped glasses from the stack under the sink. The paper wrapping is relatively new. The paper hat on the glass is there because someone ran a cotton swab somewhere they shouldn't have, and then told 1 million subscribers about it. The ashtray gets emptied. The wastebasket gets a new paper liner. Sometimes there's nothing in the wastebasket. Sometimes there's a candy wrapper, a receipt, a crumpled road map with the wrong state circled. Sometimes there's an empty Benzedrine packet, the foil kind from a pharmacy, and you put it in the liner without comment and move on. It's not your business. It's never been your business. Now, the walls. They don't clean, exactly. You wipe the light switch plates and the doorknob and the lamp pull and call it done. The walls themselves carry an archive of 100 conversations you weren't present for. They're plaster, thin as a polite suggestion, and anything said at normal volume in the room next door arrives in your room at roughly the same volume. Argument, television, one person laughing at something the other person didn't say. The walls have heard everything. The walls are very good at their job, which is to technically be walls. The bathroom comes out clean, plain, and faintly medicinal. You put a fresh towel on the rack, square it at the corners because your mother-in-law showed you how, and now you can't stop, and you stand in the doorway for a moment to look at the room. 250 square feet. A dresser, a chair, a table with a glass-ringed surface that has survived every previous cleaning, a lamp that tilts slightly toward the window. The carpet smells of Clorox and synthetic fibre, and the faint petrochemical ghost of whoever stayed before. Maria Esposito, who's been cleaning rooms at this property since 1951, knocks the door open with her hip and deposits a fresh stack of towels on the dresser without looking at them. She holds her wrist up briefly, checking her watch the way a surgeon checks the time mid-procedure. 11, she says, meaning rooms left, not rooms done. You have 40 minutes until check-in starts again. The mattress valley is waiting. Every guest who sleeps in your motel generates laundry, and a full house generates more of it than seems physically possible. Strip 11 rooms and you are standing in front of 40 sheets, a heap of pillowcases, a tangle of towels, and a stack of bath mats, all of which have to be washed, dried, and ironed flat before tonight's cars arrive. The washing happens in a back room that is hot in every season. You feed the machine in the morning and you are still feeding it after lunch. The wringer washer does its job with a sound like a very tired accordion. You run the sheets through twice because once doesn't convince you. The back room has one window, positioned to admit maximum humidity and no useful breeze. By 10 in the morning it's approximately the temperature of a bread oven, and the bread oven doesn't have to fold anything. Let's talk about the chenille bedspreads. They don't go into every cycle, they're too heavy, too slow to dry, and honestly too proud. They get spot treated, hung, and returned to the beds whether or not the treatment worked. A guest who looks closely at a bedspread is a guest with too much energy. The spread has its own theory about what constitutes clean, and that theory has survived 11 years of motel life without being seriously challenged. Your husband, Dale, handles the ironing on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He irons like the sheet has wronged him personally. The iron hisses. The sheet goes flat. He stacks it corner to corner with a precision that would be impressive if anyone saw it, which they don't, because the stack lives in a hallway closet that nobody opens except you and Dale and occasionally your youngest, who once used a pillowcase as a superhero cape and has not been forgiven. Towels are separate. There are always more towels than you predicted. A couple that checks in with 2 pieces of luggage and no visible children will somehow use 6 towels between dinner and breakfast. You've stopped trying to explain it. The towels have their own agenda. Now, the math is not complicated, but it is relentless. Clean linen costs you nothing except time, water, electricity, and the full productive hours of a Tuesday. Fresh sheets are part of what separates your place from the one 8 miles down the road with the cracked window and the vacancy sign missing the sea. That sign has been missing the sea for 3 years. The sea is not coming back. A well-made bed takes 4 minutes if you've been doing it long enough. You've been doing it long enough. You tuck the corners with a hospital fold that nobody taught you. You reverse engineered it from a demonstration at a AAA inspection in 1951, the same inspection that got you your tour book listing, which you earned by buying better pillow ticking and not flinching when the inspector opened the closet. The listing brought in 2 more cars a week that first summer. 2 more cars a week is a new water heater by the end of the year. The last sheets come out of the dryer at 2:30. They smell like nothing, which is exactly correct. They're warm from the drum. You fold the first one before it cools, then the next, then the next. The back room has gotten quieter now. The machine has stopped. The iron is unplugged. The stack is ready. Tonight's cars will arrive between 4 and 9. They will not notice the sheets. That's how you know it went right. There is a glass in every bathroom, sitting on the shelf above the sink, and that glass has become the single most scrutinized object in your motel. A magazine ran an article testing motel glasses and found things on them that no traveller once described over breakfast, and now every guest eyes the glass with suspicion. So you begin wrapping it. A small paper sleeve goes over each one, sealed at the lip, announcing that the glass is clean. Whether the glass is actually clean is a separate question. The article was in Reader's Digest, 1957, and it was called "The Germ Menace in Your Motel," which is not a title that invites calm. It tested glasses at properties across the country and found fecal bacterial contamination at a rate that inspired several people to swear off motels entirely and several more to begin travelling with their own cups in a paper bag. You did not cause this. Your glasses are clean, but the article doesn't distinguish between you and anyone else on Route 66. So now you are all in the same category, which is the category of places that require a paper hat. That paper hat communicates something specific. It says the glass was washed. It says someone touched it last with intent. It says the establishment has read the same article the guests have read and is taking a position. The paper is thin, folded in a neat cone at the lip, and it costs almost nothing per unit, which is the best kind of reassurance, the kind that is mostly theatrical but costs almost nothing per unit. Margaret in room 6 tilts hers at the light before filling it anyway. She decides it's fine. She's been deciding that since Indianapolis. The glass is not the only thing under suspicion. The bedspread has been under suspicion since before the article. It's a chenille spread in gold or green, and it has been laundered at intervals that the guests prefer not to calculate. You know exactly when it was last washed because you washed it. The guests don't know that, and there is no paper hat for a bedspread, so they tend to fold it down to the foot of the bed and sleep under the sheets, which you also washed. But the visual is more reassuring somehow. Reassurance in a motel room is mostly visual. The reassurance is cheap, visual, and almost entirely theatrical. The bathroom also has a small bar of soap sealed in paper, a folded towel with a crease in the centre, and a bottle of Lysol visible under the sink. The Lysol is not hidden. You want it seen. The phenolic smell of it hits a guest in the doorway and registers as clean before anything else in the room has a chance to register as anything. It's not subtle. It smells like a hospital that made a wrong turn into the service industry, and that is precisely the point. Now, the thing nobody writes an article about. The wastebaskets. You empty the wastebasket every morning as a matter of routine, and every morning it contains approximately the same contents: a candy wrapper, a receipt, a used tissue, and occasionally an empty prescription bottle, Benzedrine, usually, sometimes Dexedrine. The truckers and the salesmen keep moving by chemical arrangement, and the arrangement produces packaging, and the packaging ends up in your wastebasket at 9 a.m. You don't comment. Dale doesn't comment. You drop it in the outdoor bin and move on to room 9. The thing the Reader's Digest article did, beyond selling a significant number of paper sleeves, was confirm what a lot of travellers already suspected, that a motel room held the evidence of other people's private lives, imperfectly cleaned. Most of them made their peace with it, because they kept coming back. The parking lot fills every night. The NO clicks on. Margaret is already asleep in room 6, glass rinsed and set back on the shelf, paper sleeve in the wastebasket next to a candy wrapper, and the quiet residue of someone else's Tuesday. Somewhere in your 11 rooms, statistically, there is a problem you cannot see during the day. Bedbugs travel in luggage, settle into the seams of a mattress, and announce themselves only after the lights go out and a guest is lying still. The phrase about not letting them bite is not a bedtime pleasantry to you. It is a maintenance category. One complaint at the front desk can empty a room for a week while you tear it apart, and the bugs do not respect the boundaries between one room and the next. The mattress itself is already a structural concern before any biology gets involved. The inner spring cotton models that come standard in a property your size sag toward the center over 2 or 3 years, and guests roll toward the middle in their sleep whether they intend to or not. You've stopped explaining this. A new mattress runs $12 to $18. You have 11 rooms. The math stays open on your mental ledger the way a wound stays open. The chenille bedspread isn't decorative. It's armor, the outermost layer between a guest and everything the last guest left behind, and it washes easier than it looks. Dorothy, your wife, runs it through on Mondays in a washer that takes 45 minutes a cycle and sighs like it has opinions about Monday specifically. She pulls it tight enough at the corners that the fold could cut paper. The bedspread has no feelings about this. The bedspread endures. The walls are thin enough that the plaster carries sound the way a cup pressed to a door carries sound, which is to say, completely. 2 nights ago, Room 4 conducted a full argument about a sister-in-law at a volume that Room 5 described, at checkout, as educational. The TV in Room 7 runs past 11 most nights, and you've learned to identify programs by the laugh track alone. Your living quarters share a wall with Room 3. Room 3 gets the guests who requested quiet. Now, the floor. The synthetic carpet that came with the renovation in 1951 is doing something under the radiator that you've investigated twice and declined to investigate a third time. It smells of warm petroleum and something older beneath that, a base note the Clorox reaches but doesn't eliminate. A guest from Cincinnati named Gerald Marsh crouched down last August, sniffed the corner near the window unit, and said, "Huh," with the focused concern of a man who'd worked in a plant. He checked out the next morning without further comment. Gerald Marsh was onto something. You are aware of this. The room is worn, warm, and structurally opinionated. The bathroom gets the most attention because it gets inspected. The Lysol goes on every surface. The paper wrapper goes on the glass. New policy since the Reader's Digest piece made everyone suddenly very interested in who'd touched what, and the tub gets a scrub that leaves your knuckles raw by Thursday. A fresh bar of soap, individually wrapped. The soap is the size of a credit card and dissolves in approximately 2 showers, which means guests use the sliver and leave it on the ledge as a quiet accusation. You find these slivers, every morning, lined up like evidence. The cleaning window is 45 minutes between checkout at 11 and the next check-in at noon, assuming both guests cooperate on schedule, which statistically one of them won't. In 45 minutes, Dorothy strips and remakes the bed, scrubs the bathroom, sweeps, wipes the dresser, replaces the towels, and performs a visual inventory for anything missing or damaged. The lamp cord in room 9 has been fraying since April. It's on the list. The list is long and organized by urgency, and the lamp cord is somewhere in the middle, which means it gets addressed the week something above it on the list finally breaks. Out in the breezeway sits a machine that hums all night and drops ice into a tray with a crash you can hear from your bedroom. Guests come to it in their socks, carrying the metal bucket from the dresser, and they expect ice to be there at every hour you are not awake to provide it. The machine is newer than most of your furniture and more temperamental than any guest. When it stops, you hear the silence before you hear the complaint. The silence comes first. The bucket itself is metal, dented at the rim from years of being set down hard on concrete and tile. It lives on the dresser next to the TV when there's a TV, which in 1954 there often isn't. The bucket doesn't have a lid. The ice melts by morning into a shallow inch of cold water that guests pour into the bathroom sink without ceremony. Nobody asked you to provide ice. Nobody thanks you for providing ice. The bucket simply expects to be full. The ice is for more than drinks. Drinks, yes. But also, warm cans of beer a travelling salesman has carried from 3 states over, stored in the spare bucket he keeps in his trunk, because he has done this before. A cloth soaked and draped over a forehead in a room where the air conditioner is a ceiling fan and a prayer. A bag pressed against a swollen ankle from a long day in the car. The ice machine is not an amenity. It's infrastructure, the way a payphone is infrastructure, the way running water is infrastructure. You don't get thanked for it. You only hear about it when it breaks. The machine is loud, cold, and completely indifferent to your sleep schedule. A repairman named Gerald comes out on Tuesdays. He has a clipboard, and he consults the clipboard as though the clipboard knows something about the machine that neither of you does. He charges a flat fee that you've stopped being surprised by. The machine hums again. Gerald leaves. You write the amount in the ledger and do not editorialize. Meanwhile, inside the room, the ice does its secondary job. It keeps the cooler cold. Not a motel cooler. Your room doesn't have one, but the guest's own, the aluminum or steel Coleman that rides in the back seat or strapped to the roof rack and comes off the car at every stop. By the mid-50s, the portable cooler is as standard a piece of American road travel as the spare tire. It lives on the floor near the door and it drips on your tile in a small, persistent way that leaves a ring you'll scrub tomorrow morning. The cooler disapproves of your floor. It says so overnight, one slow drip at a time. You do not have a vending machine yet. That comes later, with the chains, with the idea that a hallway can do the work of a person at 2 in the morning. Right now, if a guest wants a Coca-Cola at midnight, they either planned ahead or they knock on the office door, which wakes you, or they don't get one. 2 of those outcomes are acceptable. You know which one you prefer. The ice machine hum is the sound of the motel at rest. By midnight, the neon sign out front has gone through its cycle, vacancy glowing orange-red into the road. The NO, either lit or dark depending on how the evening went, and the lot is quiet except for the occasional car turning in too fast, headlights sweeping across your curtains. The TV in room 6 has finally gone off. The argument in room 3 has settled into something below the wall's transmission threshold. And somewhere in the breezeway, the machine drops a new load of cubes into the tray, and the sound travels through the night air and through your window and lands flat and cold as the ice itself. You've stopped waking up for it. That took about 3 weeks. You did not want a pool. A pool is a hole in the ground that costs more than a car, eats chlorine by the case, and has to be skimmed, balanced and fenced before a single guest floats in it. But the motel 3 miles up the road put one in, and its rooms started filling before yours did, so now you have a pool too. It sits out front where the highway can see it, glowing aquamarine after dark, earning back its cost one slowed-down car at a time. The 1955 price to dig and pour a concrete pool runs between $3,000 and $5,000. A 1958 study, someone actually commissioned this, found that a visible pool lets you charge $1.50 more per room per night. You do the math with a pencil on the back of an invoice. You do it twice, because the first answer doesn't feel right. It does feel right. You just don't like what it's telling you about human psychology. What the pool actually signals isn't really about swimming. Nobody is doing serious laps between a Pontiac and a concrete curb in a 20 by 40 foot rectangle that smells like a chemistry lesson. What the pool signals, visible from the highway, is that something is happening here. There is leisure happening here. There is a family somewhere in America having a better summer than you, and they stopped at this motel, and you could too. The pool is a rumor of abundance, readable at highway speed. It's the reason you slowed down. A Coppertone bottle launched in 1953, so by now the pool deck has a specific smell: chlorine, suntan lotion, and the secondary scent of someone's shoulders cooking. Parents settle into aluminum lounge chairs that creak under them like small, exhausted animals. Children enter the water with the structural caution of absolutely no caution at all. Debbie, who is 7, jumps from the edge despite the sign. The sign says no jumping. Debbie has processed the sign and made her peace with it. You skim the pool at 7 in the morning before the guests are up, wearing yesterday's clothes, dragging a net on a telescoping pole across water that is never quite as blue in daylight as it is at night. There is always something in it: a moth, a band-aid, the optimistic remains of a cigarette. You remove these things without comment because you've crossed the threshold where comment adds nothing. You add chlorine. You test the pH with a kit that makes you feel like a scientist and gives you results you don't fully trust. The fence is required. The county had opinions about this, delivered in writing, with a deadline. 3 feet of chain link surrounds the perimeter, with a self-latching gate that doesn't fully self-latch. You fix the latch. The latch unfixes itself. It's a philosophical position, the latch. You fix it again. The sign out front lists pool among the amenities, same line as TV and air cooled, in a font that is confident about the pool and somewhat aspirational about the air conditioning. Guests point at the pool from the parking lot while you're taking their name and $2. They are already calculating whether their children will sleep tonight or whether tonight is a pool night, which are not the same thing and they know it. The pool fills by 3 in the afternoon. By 5 it's loud. By 7 it's quiet again because dinner is ready or because someone's father has made a decision. You drain a little water and add more chlorine. You fish out a hairpin with the net. You are, on balance, grateful for the pool in the way that you are grateful for anything that costs you money consistently and pays you back slowly and forces you to interact with a latch that has its own opinions about geometry. At night it glows. You didn't plan for it to look like that. The underwater light came with the installation, and the contractor mentioned it like an afterthought. But it does look like something. It looks like exactly the kind of thing a driver on a dark highway slows down for. Attached to the office, through a second door, is a small room with a counter and a griddle, and at 6 in the morning it becomes a diner. You are the cook. Coffee is a dime, and you refill it without being asked, because a refilled cup keeps a trucker in his seat long enough to order the eggs that actually make you money. Breakfast runs until the late risers give up. The menu has not changed in 3 years, and the regulars would notice if it did. The counter seats may be 12, if nobody spreads their elbows, which everyone does. There are 4 stools that swivel and 1 that doesn't, and every regular knows which one that is. A man named Darryl comes in every Tuesday and Thursday on his Northern California run, sets his order pad on the counter, and eats his eggs without looking up from it. He has been doing this since 1950. He tips a quarter, and he tips it every time, the same coin placed in the same corner of the saucer, with the seriousness of a man completing a ritual. Breakfast is eggs any style, pancakes, bacon, and toast. Lunch is a burger, a grilled cheese, and pie. The pie is cherry or apple, depending on what came in on Tuesday. The sign above the griddle lists prices. Eggs and toast, 75 cents. Burger with fries, $1.80. Coffee, a dime. The sign doesn't mention that the coffee comes back as many times as you want, because mentioning it would make it an offer, and it isn't an offer, it's just what happens. The smell in here is its own weather system. Rendered bacon fat, Crisco warming in the pan, yeasty commercial white bread toasting in a wire rack that runs too hot on the left side. Every piece of toast from the left slot comes out 1 shade past the description you gave. The griddle doesn't apologize. It has been running at the same temperature since Eisenhower was a general, and it sees no reason to adjust. Of course, the diner serves a second purpose that has nothing to do with food. It's where you learn what happened overnight. The trucker who came in at 2 in the morning mentions there's a patrol car sitting at the junction outside Barstow. The salesman in room 6 says the bridge on 40 is running single lane. By 7:30 you know more about the road conditions in 3 counties than anyone with a map. It works like a traffic report, except the interface is a man eating pie, and the update arrives whether you asked for it or not. The hours are not good. You open at 6, which means you're up at 5, which means you went to bed after the last guest registered at whatever time that was. You close the diner at 2, or sometimes 3 if a table won't leave, and then the kitchen needs wiping down before anything else because the health department inspector has a schedule but also he doesn't. You eat standing up. You eat fast. You eat whatever didn't sell, which some weeks is a lot of cherry pie and some weeks is nothing at all. A well-run diner attached to a 20-unit property adds maybe $2,000 a year to the bottom line, maybe. That number assumes you don't count your own labour, which you don't, because counting it would produce a figure you'd have to sit down for. The math works if you decide it works. Plenty of operators have decided this. Darryl leaves his quarter, the griddle runs too hot on the left, the coffee comes back. The sign is the most expensive thing you own that is not a building, and it has a habit of dying 1 letter at a time. Neon tubes burn out, transformers hum and quit, and a single dark letter turns your motel's name into a word you did not choose. A sign that should read vacancy at a distance instead reads acancy, and a driver doing 60 does not stop to interpret it, so you keep a ladder by the office and you learn which letters fail first. What the sign is actually doing isn't decoration. It's the entire marketing department. There is no radio ad, no newspaper listing, no travel agent with a stack of brochures pointing toward your property specifically. There is the sign, readable at speed, and then there is everything else, which is nothing. A good sign runs 12 to 18 feet tall, tubes bent into block letters in red or turquoise or a yellow that reads like a shout, and it sits at the road's edge where headlights catch it first. The neon buzzes faintly when you stand close. It smells faintly of heat. It sulks in a cold snap. The no is its own element, a smaller cluster of tubes on a separate transformer, wired so it clicks on in front of vacancy when the last room fills. You watch for it the way a sailor watches a horizon. When the NO lights, the night's math is done. When it doesn't, you're still in the business of hoping someone needs to stop. Most nights it lights around 9. Some nights it doesn't light at all, and you sit in the office with the ledger and the fan and a cup of coffee that went cold at 7, and you do not think too hard about why. The sign is bright, costly, and prone to dropping a letter at the worst moment. The sign company that installed it offered a maintenance contract. You did not take the maintenance contract. The maintenance contract costs more per year than 2 months of a room, and you have a ladder and a nephew named Gerald who is not afraid of heights and will accept payment in Sunday dinner. Gerald replaces tubes with the focused expression of someone diffusing something. He has never diffused anything. He finds the work soothing, which you find unsettling, but the sign works after he leaves, and that is the metric. Now, the AAA tourbook listing is the other signal, the one that reaches travellers before they're even in the car. A small diamond icon next to your property name means an inspector walked your rooms, checked your linens, tested your water pressure, and decided you were worth recommending. The tourbook diamond is the closest thing the road has to a seal of approval, and you earned it by regrouting the shower in Unit 4 before the inspector arrived in October. Operators who make the book see occupancy tick up by mid-decade. Operators who don't make the book repaint their sign and try again next year. There is a man 3 miles down the highway with a sign that is newer than yours and a pool he put in last summer. His no lights before 8 on Fridays. You have watched this from the parking lot while pretending to check the landscaping, which is 2 shrubs and a length of decorative gravel. The gravel does not require checking. You check it anyway. The sign is also a clock. Travellers read it against the fading light and decide whether they've gone far enough for the day. A lit vacancy at dusk is an invitation. A lit vacancy at 10 at night is a different kind of message. It means something fell through. A family pushed too hard, a salesman missed his exit, or someone just needs to stop moving. You don't ask. You hand over the key on its large stamped fob, the fob the size of a small spatula, with your motel's name pressed into the plastic, and you tell them checkout is 10. The fob exists so they don't pocket the key by accident. Most of them are too tired to pocket anything. They carry the fob like a small anchor and disappear into Unit 7, and the sign keeps buzzing in the dark, doing the only job it was ever built to do. Every Tuesday night, the same car parks in the same space, and the same man walks into your office without quite needing to tell you what he wants. He is a travelling salesman. He runs this stretch of highway every week, and he has rented room 6 on Tuesdays for longer than some of your appliances have existed. You give him a rate lower than the sign says. You keep his brand of beer cold in the office icebox. He is not a guest anymore. He is closer to a tenant who leaves. The travelling salesman is the reason you make your mortgage payment in November. He isn't one man, he is 12 men, rotating through your week on a schedule so reliable you could set the ice machine by it. Monday is Frank with the hardware samples. Tuesday is room 6. Wednesday is the 2 men from the textile company who share a room and pretend that's about the budget. Thursday is nobody, which keeps you humble. Friday through Sunday belong to families in station wagons, and families are fine, but families ask questions about the pool hours and whether the TV gets all the channels, and Frank never asks anything. Frank checks in, drinks 2 beers, watches whatever the television decides to show him, and is gone by 7:15. The arrangement is basically a subscription, except the algorithm is you, and you already know Frank's brand of beer, and that he takes the bed nearest the window and that he doesn't want extra towels. His name is in the register every week in the same handwriting, real name and real address, because Frank has nothing to hide and nowhere else to be. The register doesn't care about Frank. The register is a legal document that functions like a diary nobody reads. Maureen, the Tuesday night desk attendant your wife trained before your wife decided she'd rather be the Tuesday night desk attendant herself, keeps a small notepad with the permanent guests listed by room preference and dietary quirk. Room 4 wants the thermostat left at 68. Room 9's man is allergic to the lavender spray and she switched to plain starch on his pillowcase without being asked. The notepad lives under the desk next to the rate card, and neither document is shown to anyone. This is where the economics get interesting in a quiet way. A permanent guest at a discount rate still pays you 52 Tuesdays a year. He doesn't negotiate the rate because he got the discount by being reliable, and being reliable is the deal. He tells his colleagues about your property the same way people recommend a dentist, not enthusiastically, just with the flat confidence of someone who has not been disappointed. 3 of your current regulars came from one man's recommendation. You've never met the man. Of course, the permanent guest arrangement has a structural weakness, and the structural weakness is that he is a person. Earl Hendricks drove Route 41 for 11 years before the company reassigned him to the Northwest Territory, and the Tuesday slot sat empty for 6 weeks, feeling specifically like Earl's absence rather than a general vacancy. You didn't raise the rate for whoever eventually took it. It felt wrong. The room seemed to take the change personally. Frank is reliable, undemanding, and faintly heroic about it. The families in station wagons won't remember you. They're heading somewhere, a grandmother, a national park, a coast, and your property is a pause in that sentence, not a destination. They'll tell people they stopped somewhere in Ohio or somewhere past Amarillo, and the details will soften into a general impression of chenille and ice and eggs the next morning. That's fine. That's what you're for. But Frank will remember the beer was cold, and next Tuesday the car will be in the same space, and you'll have the key ready before he reaches the desk, and neither of you will comment on it, because some things work best when they're not examined too closely. The price of a room is not printed anywhere permanent, because the price of a room is a negotiation you have several times a night. The sign suggests a number. The driver standing in front of you, tired and doing arithmetic, suggests a different one. You know what the motel up the road charges, you know how many rooms you have left, and you know that an empty room earns nothing at all once the sun is up. Somewhere between those facts is the number you will actually say out loud. The AAA tour book has a listed rate, and the listed rate is what you charge when someone waves a tour book at you, because the AAA inspector might come back, and the AAA inspector has opinions. Getting into that book took you 2 years, a new set of bathroom towels, and a resurfaced parking lot. You earned the listing by buying nicer bath mats and standing in your own driveway pretending it was freshly sealed. You keep the tour book price. For AAA people, for everyone else, the price moves. A couple with out-of-state plates pulling in at 9:30 on a Wednesday in February gets a different number than a family of 4 arriving on a Friday in July with a dog and a roof rack. You don't post a schedule for this. The schedule is in your head, and it has variables. How late is it? How many rooms are left? Do they look like the kind of guests who will require the bathroom to be re-cleaned twice? The dog costs 50 cents extra. The dog always costs 50 cents extra. The register takes whatever you give it. Every guest writes down a name, a home address, and a vehicle make, model, and license plate number. This is the law in most states, and the law is taken seriously by approximately nobody. The register sits on the counter and accepts whatever you write in it. Franklin Roosevelt of 14 Main Street, Anywhere, Ohio, driving a tan Ford of unspecified year, has stayed here 11 times. You don't ask. The register doesn't ask. The key comes with the room. It's attached to a fob the size of a small spatula, stamped with the motel's name and room number in raised metal letters, specifically engineered to be too large to forget in your pocket. The fob's design is not about hospitality. The fob's design is about the fact that someone, somewhere, pocketed 30 keys in a single season. Mrs. Kowalski, who runs the front desk at the Pine Rest Motor Inn outside Flagstaff, keeps a cardboard box of returned fobs under the counter and counts them every Sunday morning, the way a bank teller counts a drawer that keeps coming up short. She is usually short too. Standard rates in 1953 run $3 to $6 on a secondary highway. $1.25 a night was what the very first motel charged in 1925, and that got you a cabin and a garage. 30 years of inflation and expectations added roughly $4 and removed the garage. A premium tourist route property on Route 66 might ask 7 or 8, and the 7 or 8 buys you a concrete pool visible from the road, which a 1958 study confirmed was worth exactly $1.50 more per room per night. By 11 at night, the math changes again. 2 rooms left, and a pickup truck idling in the lot with a man who's been driving since Albuquerque and looks like he'd sleep standing up in a broom closet if you'd let him. You would. The number you say is lower than the sign. He doesn't ask why. Neither of you mentions it. He pays cash, you hand him the spatula key, and in the morning you'll find a room that needs a standard clean and not much else. The mattress has its valley. You know which side he'll have slept on before you open the door. There is a man who may arrive unannounced, stay one night, inspect everything, and decide whether your motel exists. He works for the Automobile Association, and a listing in its annual book is the difference between a driver who has heard of you and a driver who has not. So you prepare for a guest who might be him at all times, which means every guest gets the version of your motel you would show an inspector. You will never know which one he was. You only find out months later, in print. The tour book listing is the difference between a name a driver trusts and a name he's never heard, and you earn it by keeping the bathroom grout presentable. The AAA inspector has a checklist. You don't have the checklist. You have a theory of the checklist, built over years from what other owners heard from other owners who also didn't have the checklist. The grout gets scrubbed. The towels get folded into thirds. The soap wrapper stays on until the guest unwraps it, at which point that soap belongs to them now, philosophically and legally. The bathroom is 12 square feet of tile and phenolic Lysol smell, and it is doing a lot of work. The glass gets its small paper sleeve, crimped at the top like a little hat. The hat says, "We know what the last person did. We have addressed it." The bedspread gets shaken and smoothed. The valley in the centre of the mattress gets smoothed too, which accomplishes nothing structurally but does present an optimistic surface. Vera Haskell, who runs the 1-4 Unit Pines Motor Court outside of Flagstaff with her husband Walt and has not taken a full day off since 1949, pulls the spread taut at the corners until it could cut paper. She does not flip the mattress. Nobody flips the mattress. The mattress has formed its opinions and they are permanent. The room smells of Clorox, linen starch, and warm synthetic carpet, which is a combination that means clean to anyone who has stayed in enough motels to recalibrate what clean means. The windows get opened for 15 minutes regardless of weather. The ashtray gets emptied and wiped even if it's empty. The Bible stays in the nightstand drawer, always present, as if placed there by someone who knew you specifically. Of course, the pool helps. A concrete pool visible from the road is worth $1.50 more per room per night, according to a 1958 industry study that operators read with the seriousness of scripture. The inspector might walk its perimeter. He might check the depth marker. He might notice whether the deck chairs are aluminum with full-length plastic webbing or the kind with 2 broken straps that tip sideways. You have the good chairs. You bought them in April. Coppertone launched in 1953, and by now the deck smells like chlorine and someone's ambition. The whole performance is constant, careful, and invisible to the guest it's for. The sign matters too. Neon in red, yellow, and turquoise, readable at highway speed, buzzing softly in the dark like it's composing something. Vacancy in white. And the unlighted no, waiting above it on its own relay, ready to click on when the last room fills. A dark NO on a lit sign is the motel equivalent of a sold-out show. It happens on Fridays in summer and almost never in February. You want the NO. You want it every night. The inspector probably drove past 3 properties before yours. What he saw first was the sign. On a regular schedule, a particular car pulls into your lot, and the man inside is not looking for a room. He is local law enforcement, and the arrangement between you is old enough that very little has to be said. You hand over an envelope. In exchange, your motel is not visited, not inspected, and not made the subject of anyone's slow afternoon. It is filed, in your own head, under operating expenses, somewhere between the chlorine and the linen service. Everyone on this highway pays it. Nobody on this highway names it. The amount is understood rather than negotiated. You didn't negotiate it. Whoever owned this property before you didn't negotiate it. It arrived as a fact of the road, the way the county property tax arrived as a fact, except the county sends a bill and the county does not drive a 51 Ford with the engine running. You fold the envelope, he pockets it, he compliments your pool, you thank him. This is the entire meeting. The transaction is brief, cordial, and entirely deniable. In Bible Belt counties, the arrangement runs differently. There's no envelope, or at least no envelope you're allowed to produce without creating a different problem. Instead, you get the inspection. A county official named something like Mr. Wharton arrives on a Tuesday with a clipboard, checks that your registrations are signed in full, looks at your parking lot the way a man looks at a parking lot when he's decided what he'll find before he gets there, and notes that your vacancy sign's letter spacing may be in violation of the new ordinance. The ordinance was passed 4 months ago. You were not notified. The fine is $12. You pay it. Next Tuesday, Mr. Wharton has a cousin who does vacancy signs. Sunday is its own regulatory event. Blue laws in dry counties mean your attached diner cannot sell anything with the word beer involved. which you already knew. What you perhaps did not know is that some townships extend this to a prohibition on new guests checking in before noon, on the theological premise that a traveller arriving Sunday morning should be in a pew, not a parking lot. Your sign technically stays lit. The interpretation of whether the sign constitutes an offer is left to whoever Mr. Wharton sent this week. Meanwhile, the guests who are already in their rooms on Sunday morning are fine. The law is not interested in guests who are already horizontal. Now, the reputation that makes all of this enforcement feel urgent to someone in a county office. Nearly half the country associates motels like yours with immoral activity, the kind of sentiment that ends up in newspapers and does not end up helping your AAA rating. The architecture is the problem, or at least the architecture is what everyone points at. No lobby, no doorman, you park directly at your door, and the door closes, and nothing about the exterior of the building changes. Whatever happens inside is between the carpet and the chenille. The chenille doesn't talk. The walls, as you know, very much do. A guest named, say, Mr. R. Johnson from Columbus, Ohio, checks in with a woman who is almost certainly not from Columbus, Ohio. The register entry is legally required to contain a real name, home address, and vehicle plate. Nobody checks. You hand over the key on its large stamped fob, the fob the size of a folded napkin, deliberately unwieldy, specifically designed to prevent guests from absently pocketing it, and you return to your desk. What Mr. Johnson does with his evening is not your department. Your department is the envelope and the Tuesday clipboard, and making sure the paper hats are on the glasses by 9. The 1953 Greenlease kidnapping moved through a string of motels the way a bad check moves through a series of registers, and when the papers covered it, they covered the motels too, which is how a $600,000 ransom and a very specific geography of American roadside lodging became permanently attached in the public imagination. 4 years later, a novelist named Robert Bloch was working on a book. He'd read about a man in Wisconsin. He was thinking about a motel. Nobody on this highway asked for any of that, but here it is anyway, arriving like Mr. Wharton, uninvited, clipboard in hand. In this county, Sunday has opinions, and the opinions are enforced. The diner cannot sell certain things on certain days. The law keeps a list, and a sergeant with a notebook is willing to come check whether you are honouring it. One county over, none of this applies, and a motel identical to yours operates by entirely different rules. You did not choose which side of the county line to build on. You only learned, afterward, which set of Sundays you had agreed to. The blue laws vary so specifically from town to town that your AAA tour book says nothing about them, because the tour book would need a second volume just for footnotes. In some counties, no alcohol may be sold before noon. In others, not at all. In one jurisdiction outside Tulsa, you cannot sell beer on Sunday, but you can sell the cups. The law has a nuanced relationship with containers. Your diner serves coffee at 6 in the morning regardless, because nobody has ever successfully argued that coffee violates the Sabbath, and you are not going to be the test case. The inspection arrives as a man named Clifton, on a Tuesday, with a clipboard and a pleasant expression that does not mean what a pleasant expression usually means. He checks the bathroom. He checks the spare linens. He opens the dresser drawer to confirm there is a Gideon's Bible inside, because in this county there is a list, and the Bible is on it. The drawer has held a Bible since 1951. The Bible has not moved. It has, however, developed the specific stillness of an object that understands its function perfectly and has no further ambitions. Clifton writes something down. You do not ask what. He comes back in 3 months. You keep the Bible in the drawer and the linen count accurate and the bathroom phenol clean, and this arrangement renews itself every 3 months on terms nobody ever quite says out loud. Meanwhile, your neighbour 2 miles east is paying a flat monthly envelope and running a looser ship. His pool stays open past 10. His guests check in at midnight without a second question. His diner sells beer on Sundays, technically to members of a private club, and the membership application is $1 and takes about 4 seconds. The county line is not a moral distinction. It's a zoning quirk with consequences. The county line is arbitrary, invisible, and weirdly powerful. The Sunday restrictions hit the diner hardest. You can serve eggs. The eggs are fine with the Lord, apparently, but the pie situation is ambiguous. And there was a summer in 1954 when a deputy came in and stood by the counter for 40 minutes just to see what you'd do about the pie. You sold him coffee. He refilled it twice. He left without writing anything down. The pie stayed under the dome. Both of you knew this dance, and neither of you had choreographed it. Your guests find all of this confusing in the particular way that people from outside the county find local ordinances confusing, which is completely and with some irritation. A salesman named Dennis, who stays with you every third Tuesday, once asked why the vending machine in the hallway was covered with a dish towel on Sunday morning. You told him it was maintenance. The machine was particular about its maintenance schedule. Dennis accepted this without follow-up, which is the correct response to county line theology. The honest accounting is this. The inspection regime costs you time and composure, but it also costs you less than the envelope system, and it comes with a certain civic dignity. Clifton does not want anything except the Bible in the drawer and the linen count right. He is, in his way, a very straightforward man. He arrives, he checks, he leaves. The clipboard goes back to wherever clipboards go between Tuesdays. The Bible stays put. The pie waits under its dome like it has been waiting since before any of this was a county at all. A car arrives after dark, and the two people in it would prefer that you not look at them too closely. He does the talking, she stays in the car. The name that goes in the register is not going to survive contact with reality, and the wedding the two of them are implying did not happen. Your architecture makes this easy. They park at their own door and enter without passing a soul. Your job is to take the cash, hand over the key, and develop a sudden interest in the paperwork. The register is a legal document, technically. Every guest is required by innkeeper law to provide a real name, a real address, and the make, model, and plate number of their vehicle. This is stated, sometimes, on a small printed card at the desk. The card has been there for years. Nobody reads it. Nobody is required to enforce it. The man writes something that rhymes with a real name: Johnson, Smith, Brown, the holy trinity of American pseudonyms, and the address is a street number in a city he may or may not have visited. You don't check. The law doesn't require you to check. It just requires him to write something, and he has written something, and that is the end of the transaction. The key fob is large enough to be embarrassing in a jacket pocket, stamped with the motel name and room number in raised metal letters, room 9. He takes it without making eye contact, which is the correct amount of eye contact for this particular exchange. She is already out of the car by the time he turns around. Neither of them has luggage worth mentioning. The door closes. The curtain, which has been hanging slightly crooked since March, swings once and settles. The walls are plaster, quarter-inch, painted the colour of a headache, and they carry sound with the enthusiasm of a very motivated assistant. The television next door comes through clearly enough to follow the plot. A conversation becomes a full transcript. Whatever is happening in room 9 is, in a practical sense, a shared experience with the occupant of room 8, who is a travelling hardware salesman named Gerald and who has heard considerably worse and will hear it again Thursday. J. Edgar Hoover had been calling motor courts camps of crime since 1940, a label that did nothing to reduce occupancy and a great deal to establish the aesthetic. The Bates Motel wouldn't open until 1960, technically, but the anxiety it borrowed was already well stocked and fully furnished. Margaret, the owner's wife, strips the linens at 9 the next morning without ceremony. She's been doing this since 1948 and has developed the practiced detachment of someone who's worked a very long customs line. She shakes the chenille spread once, hard, and it gives up whatever it knows without complaint. The ashtray has 2 lipstick-ringed filters in it, and a matchbook from a steakhouse 2 counties over. She replaces it with a clean one. The matchbook goes in her apron pocket, not for any particular reason, just because it's there. The paper-wrapped glass on the bathroom shelf is fresh. Guests look at the glass first now. Before, nobody looked at the glass. Now everybody does, and it had better be wearing its little paper hat or the comment card hears about it. Hygiene theatre, performed twice daily. By midnight, the NO has clicked on in front of vacancy. The sign buzzes once, settles, buzzes again. The couple in room 9 are asleep or close enough. Gerald in room 8 has the television on low. The register on the desk has 17 names in it, at least 14 of which are real, which is about average for a Thursday in July on a secondary highway in America in 1955. You turn off the desk lamp. You don't think too hard about the other 3. You run a clean, quiet, family-operated business, and a significant fraction of the country believes your business is a den of sin. A national poll asked, and nearly half of American adults associated motels like yours with immoral activity. The director of the FBI called places like yours camps of crime, in a magazine, by name. None of this is based on your motel specifically. All of it lands on your motel specifically, every time a guest hesitates in the doorway and decides whether your 11 rooms are respectable. The reputation didn't arrive without help, and the park at your door layout is where it started. A man backs his Ford up to the door of room 6, carries nothing in, and is inside before you've finished writing the date. No lobby, no doorman, nobody to walk past. You built the place around the private automobile, and the private automobile turned out to be wonderfully convenient for a man who would rather not be seen walking anywhere. You didn't design it for that. You just can't undesign it now. The register didn't help. You're legally required to collect a name, a home address, and the make, model, and plate number of the vehicle. The law is clear on this. What the law is quieter about is what happens if none of it is true. Guests write whatever they like, in handwriting that suggests they may have invented their name 30 seconds earlier, and you accept it because you are running a lodging business, not a courtroom. Nobody on earth ever checked. The register exists as a document of creative fiction, filed neatly in a binder you keep behind the desk. The police arrangement handles the rest. Most operators in a mid-sized town pay a flat monthly amount, not a fine, not a fee, nothing with a receipt, to the local precinct, filed somewhere between utilities and miscellaneous under-operating expenses. It's not a secret, and it's not discussed. Officer Denny pulls into your lot every third Thursday, parks by the office, accepts an envelope, and drives away. The envelope is the agreement. The agreement is that your 11 rooms remain a private matter. In counties without that arrangement, you get inspections instead, the kind that happen on Sunday mornings at 7 a.m., because the blue law takes a hard line on Sunday mornings, and so does the Baptist congregation 2 miles up the road. The green lease case didn't help you either. In 1953, a 6-year-old boy was kidnapped in Kansas City, and the ransom, $600,000, the largest in American history at that point, moved through a string of motel rooms across the Midwest. The case was in every newspaper for weeks. The motel appeared in the coverage as geography, as infrastructure, as the natural habitat of men who needed to move money without being looked at. After that, the motel is not just a place where marital arrangements are made. The motel is where crime stays the night. Norman Bates won't arrive until 1960, when Hitchcock adapts a novel published the year before, based loosely on a Wisconsin man named Ed Gein who did things that are not appropriate to describe while you're trying to sleep. The Bates Motel is fictional. The anxiety it crystallizes is not. It takes everything the public already feels about roadside lodging, the isolation, the anonymity, the owner living on the property, the rooms just a few steps from the parking lot, and gives it a name and a shower scene. After that movie, the word motel carries a specific temperature. You feel it. A housekeeper named Dolores, who has worked your property for 3 years, strips a room in 11 minutes flat. She pulls the sheets without looking at them the way you'd rather not look at them, bundles the towels, wipes the bathroom surfaces with a Lysol-soaked rag that has its own institutional smell, sharp, phenolic, aggressively confident, and places a fresh paper-wrapped glass on the bathroom shelf. The paper hat on the glass is your response to a magazine article we are not going to get into at this hour. It says, "We know about the article. We have taken the glass seriously." Dolores tucks the bedspread corners, smooths the chenille flat, and moves to the next room. The valley in the mattress remains. It has always remained. It is part of the room now, like the furniture. Cleaning a room means emptying its wastebasket, and the wastebasket is the most honest thing a guest leaves behind. The register lies. The basket does not. In the basket from room 4, you find the small empty bottles and torn packaging of the pills that keep a salesman driving through the night, prescription, legal, and consumed at a rate no doctor intended. You tie off the bag and carry it out. You have learned not to draw conclusions out loud about people you will check in again next week. Benzodrine and dexedrine are the fuel of the American highway in 1953. Technically, you need a prescription. The prescription is not difficult. A sympathetic doctor, a truck stop pharmacist, a particular kind of understanding between adults who all need the same roads covered by Friday. The empty foil packaging crinkles at the bottom of the bag like a small apology. You add it to the bin outside room 7. Room 7 had 2 guests. The bin has 4 empties. You carry on. What else is in there? A bus schedule with 3 stops circled and then crossed out. A candy bar wrapper. A folded piece of motel stationery with 1 sentence written on it, and then torn almost in half, not quite. You don't read the sentence. You have a policy. The policy was not officially announced. It developed on its own sometime in your second month of doing this job, the way all useful policies do. A woman named Connie. She cleans rooms 6 through 12 on your block, holds the torn stationery up to the window once, squints, then puts it back. She doesn't tell you what it said, you don't ask. The wastebasket contents of a given morning form a small, compressed biography. How far someone came, how well they slept, how much they drank, what they couldn't say to anyone's face. A half-eaten package of saltines, an empty bottle of something amber-coloured with no label. A postcard addressed but never stamped, the handwriting getting looser toward the bottom as if the sender ran out of conviction mid-sentence. It's a diary, except it's in a metal bin, and you're the one with the liners. The amphetamines are not the strangest item. The strangest item you have found, and this is a real list, not a theoretical one, includes a pair of dress shoes with the laces removed, a child's spelling test with a gold star still attached, and once, memorably, a man's entire wallet with everything inside it except the cash. The wallet sat on top of everything else like it wanted to be noticed. You put it in the office lost and found box. It was never claimed. The box has opinions about human optimism. Now, you are not a private investigator. You are not being paid to reconstruct the previous 12 hours of a stranger's life from its residue. You are being paid to strip the bed, wipe the sink, fold the paper hat back onto the glass, and move on to room 5 in the next 11 minutes. The basket is a side effect of doing the job, not the job itself. You know this. It's the only thing in the room that doesn't get made back up into something presentable before the next guest arrives. The bed gets smoothed, the towels get replaced, the basket gets emptied. Connie finishes room 12 and wheels the cart past you. She drops a Benzedrine wrapper into her apron pocket, smooths the pocket flat, and continues down the walkway without breaking stride. You don't ask. She doesn't explain. It's a long morning, and the rooms don't clean themselves. A family pulls into your lot, tired from the road, and the law and custom of this region expect you to decide whether to turn them away based on the colour of their skin. You did not write this rule. You are merely expected to enforce it, at your own front desk, on people who have been driving precisely because so many other front desks already turned them away. The decision is not abstract. It is standing in your office, asking for a room you have, while you decide what you are. They're still driving at 8 on a Wednesday night, and it isn't preference. 2 adults, 2 kids, a suitcase roped to the roof rack. The math of black travel in 1953 runs on a different set of numbers. Which gas stations open their bathrooms, which diners set a table, which roof over the night will actually take the money. That math eats hours, then days. By the time the headlights swing into your lot, the family has already been turned away once tonight, maybe twice. The children are asleep in the back seat, small, folded, and trusting. The man at the wheel has gone past tired into something quieter, and he is looking at your office window, deciding whether it's worth getting out of the car. Victor H. Green solved part of this problem in 1936 with a booklet that fit in a glove compartment. The Negro Motorist Green Book. Updated yearly, sold at post offices and barbershops, listing hotels, rooming houses, beauty parlours, and the occasional roadside property that would actually take you in. It's basically a 5-star review system, except a bad result meant driving through the night with nowhere to stop. Green called it a guide that would make travel a pleasure without embarrassment. The embarrassment he was referring to was being told, at a front desk identical to yours, that there were no rooms, while the no vacancy sign still read vacancy and had been reading vacancy for the last 4 hours. Coverage in the Deep South ran thin. The Green Book's southeast pages had gaps you could drive through for 100 miles without a single listing. Some entries were private homes, a woman named Dorothy in Biloxi who kept 2 extra rooms and made breakfast for guests she'd never met, because the alternative was that they slept in the car. The car, parked on the shoulder, being a different kind of problem. Your property is not listed. Most along your strip aren't. The ones that exist slightly off the main arteries, family run, word of mouth, the kind where the owner, a man named Mr. Tatum, hands you the key himself and tells you the ice machine is around back and it sticks on the left side. He says it the same way to everyone. His property isn't in a guidebook. It's in someone's head, passed through a phone call 3 states back by someone who stayed there in 1951 and remembered being treated like a person. The choice is standing in your office in a clean, pressed, road-worn shirt. Turn the family away, and you keep the local custom, the local regulars, the local officer who already knows which envelope is his. You keep what people on this road call the peace, which always seems to mean somebody else sleeps in the car. Or you hand over the key, and you learn by the next morning's phone call exactly what that costs, in pressure, in muttering, in a man who considers himself a community figure asking what kind of place you think you're running. It looks like a practical decision. It isn't one. From the road, in the dark, the neon all looks the same. VACANC burns red and yellow with identical hospitality from 100 yards. You can't tell which places will take the family and which won't until you walk up and ask, and neither can they. The difference is the man behind the counter, and tonight the man behind the counter is you. The family pulls in anyway. The children have to sleep somewhere. The lot is right there, and the office light is on. There is a book, published every year out of New York, that lists the places in this country where a black traveller can actually stop, and your motel is either in it or it is not. If you are in it, you have agreed to something the other motels on this highway have not. You will see families arrive who have driven far past the point of tiredness, because the last several towns offered them nothing. They are not surprised to find a clean room. They are surprised to be allowed to rent it. The Green Book is not a travel guide in the way that Word usually works. It doesn't describe scenery or suggest detours. It is a list of people who will not turn you away, organised by state and city, updated annually because the list changes. A place that was safe last summer may not be safe this summer, because ownership changed, or the owner got nervous, or the town did. Victor Green publishes it out of Harlem and sells it at Esso stations, which is a detail worth sitting with. The gas station is the distribution network because the gas station is the one roadside institution that cannot easily refuse a sale. You need fuel, or you don't move. Everything else on the highway is optional. A Green Book listing means, for your property, that word travels. A family in Detroit planning a drive to visit relatives in Birmingham will sit at a kitchen table with the book open and trace a route by the listings the way other families trace it by scenery. Your 20-unit motel in a mid-sized town is a waypoint on that map. You are, in practical terms, a coordinate. Delphine, the woman who arrived last Tuesday with 3 children and a husband who hadn't spoken since Arkansas, walked your parking lot twice before she came through the office door. Not because she was uncertain of the address, because she was checking whether the walk from the car to the room was exposed. The rooms you rent are the same rooms. Same chenille spread, same valley in the mattress, same thin walls conducting the television from next door, at a volume that suggests your neighbour believes you are also interested in what Ed Sullivan is up to. The rate is the same. The bathroom has the same paper hat on the glass, which is either reassuring or not, depending on whether you've read the Reader's Digest article. It is the same plain, clean, unremarkable box it is for everyone. That, in its way, is the extraordinary part. Of course, being in the book has a geography problem. Coverage thins dramatically once you move through the deep south. The listings drop to a handful of private homes, church-affiliated rooming houses, the occasional black-owned tourist court on the outskirts of a city. A family driving from Chicago to New Orleans in 1954 can plan a route with reasonable confidence through Tennessee, then hit a stretch of Mississippi where the margin between listed stops is wide enough that you do the math on your gas tank before you do anything else. The book is honest about this in the way a map is honest. It shows you exactly where the road runs out, which is useful information delivered at the worst possible moment. What you don't see, checking a new arrival in, is the planning that came before it. The phone calls made before leaving home to confirm you are still open, still listed, still the same ownership. The cooler packed because stopping for a meal is its own separate calculation. Marcus, who checks in alone on a Wednesday in June and is neatly dressed in a way that suggests he ironed his shirt at the last stop, sets his single bag on the luggage rack with the efficiency of a man who has done this 100 times and learned not to unpack more than he needs until morning confirms the room is holding. He tips with the specific courtesy of someone who knows that this transaction is not guaranteed and that the person across the counter made a choice to be here. You have made a choice to be here too. That choice has a cost the other operators on this strip do not pay, and it does not appear on any ledger. The walls between your rooms are thinner than anyone admits at check-in, and sound passes through them as if they were a courtesy rather than a barrier. A conversation in room 3 is available. in full, to whoever is lying awake in room 4. So is a television, an argument, a snore, and everything else two strangers might do on opposite sides of a single sheet of plaster. The complaints arrive in the morning, polite and specific. You cannot fix the walls. You can only choose, carefully, who goes next to whom. Gerald handles the register every night at the front desk that also functions as his kitchen counter, and his real skill isn't the booking or the cleaning. It's the spatial diplomacy of who gets room 5 and whether room 6 should sit empty as a buffer. He has a working theory about travellers. Salesmen go on the highway side. Families go on the parking lot side, toward the pool. Anyone who pays in cash and doesn't meet his eyes gets the end unit, far from everyone, adjacent to nothing but the ice machine. The ice machine. Let's talk about the ice machine. It lives in a small concrete alcove between units 8 and 9, and it hums with the steady self-importance of a small appliance that believes it runs the place. Every 40 minutes or so, it drops a fresh load of cubes into the metal tray below, with a crash loud enough to make you check whether a car door just closed or a small country has had a disagreement. Guests come to it barefoot at midnight, in pajamas, carrying metal buckets. The ice is free, the noise is also free, both arrive without warning, the walls carry more than conversation. They carry the television in room 7, a RCA set bolted to a stand, available at properties that can afford it, which most can't yet in 1953. TV won't be standard until 1957 or so. Until then, the room is quiet in a specific way, no background flicker, no laugh track bleeding through plaster. Just the ice machine, a passing car, and whatever the couple next door has decided to discuss at volume. The walls have heard everything. The walls have opinions. The walls are, professionally, keeping them to themselves. Gerald has a system for the complaints. He listens. He nods. He says he'll look into it, which means he will look at the register and confirm that the person who caused the noise has already checked out and is currently 40 miles down US. 40, which makes looking into it largely ceremonial. He offers a discount on the next stay. Most people take it. The complaint closes. Nobody has been moved. Nothing has been fixed. The walls are still the walls. The construction is not malicious. It's economic. A unit costs what it costs to build, and thin plaster over a wood frame is how you get to 20 rooms without a bank loan that takes a decade to unwind. You economize on the wall. The guest in room 4 economizes on sleep. It is a small, plain, unbothered little room, which is exactly why people sleep in it. The bathroom has a tub-shower combination, a single bar of soap still in its wrapper, and a glass wrapped in a small paper sleeve, a development so recent it still feels slightly ceremonial. The paper sleeve does not sterilize anything. It signals that someone at some point gave it some thought. That's the whole job. The Lysol smell in the bathroom is doing heavier lifting and knows it. Outside, the neon sign runs through its nightly routine. Vacancy in turquoise and yellow, readable at 60 miles an hour, which is the only speed at which anyone reads a motel sign. When Gerald fills the last room, the red no clicks on in front of it. No vacancy. The sign doesn't apologize. It just states the situation and lets the driver make their own arrangements. The next property is 4 miles up the road. The sign there is red and white. The coffee is the same. Every mattress you own is slowly developing a hollow in its exact center, where thousands of nights of guests have pressed down in the same place. A new mattress is firm and flat and forgettable. A 4-year-old mattress is a gentle valley that rolls a sleeping couple toward each other whether they planned on it or not. Guests mention it. They mention it the way people mention weather, as a fact rather than a request, because they know and you know that a new mattress is not in this month's budget. The economics of that decision are simple and unforgiving. A new inner spring double costs $35 in 1953. You have 20 rooms. That's $700 to replace every mattress once, which is roughly 2 months of net profit, which is money that was already earmarked for the water heater. So, the valley stays. The valley has tenure. It has been there longer than some of the staff, and it has a more consistent attendance record. The chenille bedspread lies over it all in a pattern of small tufted bumps that no longer quite match at the edges where it's been laundered 40 times. You replace it when it starts to fray, which is a judgment call you make while standing in the doorway at 9 in the morning holding a pile of sheets that smell of Clorox, starch, and a faint petrochemical note from the synthetic carpet underneath. The carpet is the color of a decision made quickly, rust, or possibly terracotta. It's the color of a man who said that one without much deliberation and has not thought about it since. The bathroom is where you put the effort in. Sharp Lysol on the fixtures, a clean ring set beside the tub, the paper-wrapped glass standing upright on the shelf like it graduated from something. Doris, who does rooms 7 through 14 on weekday mornings, folds the end of the toilet paper into a crisp point. It takes her 4 seconds. She does it without looking down. The pointed triangle means the room has been touched and restored, and in Doris's interpretation of the job, it is not negotiable. The smell of that room when you open the door fresh cleaned isn't unpleasant. It isn't pleasant either. It's institutional. Clorox up front, then the starch from the linen spray, then the carpet warming under the afternoon sun through thin curtains that don't quite close. It's a smell that belongs to no one and has belonged to hundreds of people, which is more or less the motel's entire business model compressed into an odour. The room is worn, soft, and completely without ambition. The dresser has 3 drawers, and the bottom one sticks. It has always stuck. Every guest discovers this on the second morning when they're trying to find a clean shirt, and the drawer holds for a moment like it's reconsidering, then releases. Nobody reports a sticking drawer. It's below the threshold of a complaint, but above the threshold of a minor private irritation that stays with you until Tulsa. You know about the drawer. You've meant to plane the bottom edge for probably 18 months. Of course, the room also has a chair, one, upholstered in a fabric that coordinates with nothing in particular, and a table with a lamp whose shade is slightly dented from an incident nobody documented. The lamp works. The wattage is low enough that reading in bed after 9 o'clock is technically possible but requires a commitment to the project. The light is the colour of mild discouragement, and the mattress keeps its valley, quietly, without complaint, like a very patient geographic feature that has accepted its role in the landscape and is simply waiting to receive whoever arrives next. A guest leans on the counter and asks, casually, whether the rooms have a television, and you have to tell him that they do not. Sets are arriving in motels along the better highways, advertised on signs, expected by anyone who has stayed in one. You have 11 rooms, and the cost of putting a set in each is the cost of a small disaster. So the guest goes to his room with a radio and his own thoughts, and you add the television to the list of things the motel up the road has and you do not. The list is longer than it used to be. Air conditioning is on it. The motel, 4 miles east, put window units in last summer and raised his rate by $1.50. You watch the cars slow down on the highway as they read his sign, then keep going past yours. You have ceiling fans. The ceiling fans work fine. They spin at the speed of mild regret, pushing the same hot air from one side of the room to the other in a slow, democratic circle. The pool, you don't have either. A concrete pool runs $3,000 to $5,000 installed, and a 1958 study, which you have read twice, unhappily, found that a visible pool lets you charge $1.50 more per room per night. You know this because you drive past the Stardust Pines every morning and count the cars in their lot and then count yours. Meanwhile, the Stardust Pines has a pool and a television in every room and a sign that says Collar TV coming soon, which is, frankly, aggressive. Harold Finster runs the Stardust Pines. Harold Finster refinanced in 1951 and spent the money correctly. Harold Finster stands by his pool in the afternoon with a coffee cup and watches the highway the way a man watches something he has already won. You do not hate Harold Finster. You simply find his sign difficult to look at directly. The AAA Tourbook inspector came through in April. He had a clipboard and a tie and the quiet energy of a man who has found better bathrooms than yours and intends to document the difference. A listing in the Tourbook is hard to win and easy to lose, and you keep it by replacing the bathroom grout before it develops its own personality. You passed. Barely. The inspector noted the absence of in-room television in a column that exists specifically for absences. It's on your record now. The grout passed. The television column did not. The list is long, specific, and quietly growing. The radio in room 7 picks up 3 stations clearly, and a 4th one that fades in and out, depending on the weather and the disposition of whoever is operating it. At 11 at night, when the highway quiets down and the last car has parked and the ice machine has made its final crash of the evening, you can stand at the edge of the lot and hear, faintly, the radio through the window of room 7, some late broadcast, orchestra music. The tinny sound of something far away coming through a small speaker in a small room, under a ceiling fan, moving slowly. It's not nothing. The guest in room 7 has his shoes off and his belt loosened and his notes spread across the table, and the room is doing what a room is supposed to do, even without a television. You go inside and write down the television again, at the bottom of the list, in the same handwriting as the last 4 times. The list doesn't shorten, it waits. You have a window air conditioning unit, and you do not have 11 of them. In a sunbelt summer, a cooled room is the difference between a guest who sleeps and a guest who lies on top of the bedspread and resents you until dawn. So the cool rooms become a resource you ration. The salesman who comes every week gets one, the family with the baby gets one. The man who argued about the rate gets a ceiling fan and a window that opens, and he gets to think about his choices. The ceiling fan is not nothing. It moves the air from one corner of the room to another corner of the room at a pace that suggests it has no opinion about arriving. The chenille bedspread breathes a little. The center valley in the mattress holds the heat of the previous occupant for a while, and then it holds your heat, and the distinction stops mattering around 2 in the morning. You leave the window open. The window delivers moths and the sound of the ice machine and at some point a portion of whoever is arguing in Unit 9. The ice machine sits in a concrete alcove between the vending machine and the utility closet, humming with the quiet certainty of something that knows it's essential. Every hour or so it drops a load of cubes into the metal tray with a crash that carries clearly into rooms 1 through 4. Guests walk down in bare feet, in pajamas, in dress shirts they haven't quite taken off yet, carrying the little metal bucket. They fill it. They carry it back. This is the infrastructure. A portable cooler on the floor of your room, packed with ice, is where your beer lives, your leftover diner pie, the bottle of RC Cola for the morning. The ice machine doesn't know it's the backbone of the room's economy. It just hums and drops. The cool rooms are scarce, coveted, and quietly rationed. Margaret Poole, the owner's wife, checks the machine every morning at 7 before she starts the rooms. She lifts the lid, peers in, replaces the lid. The machine doesn't need checking. She checks it anyway. The machine accepts this with indifference. The rooms without air conditioning get a discount nobody advertises. You find out when you ask, or when you look tired enough that it seems like the right thing to offer. $3.50 instead of $5.50, which is either a bargain or a confession depending on how you feel about moths. The room still has the lamp with the amber shade. It still has the dresser with the drawer that sticks. It still has the bathroom with the Lysol smell and the glass wrapped in its little paper hat. A recent addition following the Reader's Digest situation, which nobody mentions directly but everyone has read. The paper hat says, "We are aware of the previous findings, and we would like to put them behind us." In the bathroom, the towels are thin but folded into a shape that communicates effort. There are 2 of them. If you need a third, you knock on the office door, which is also the front door of the family's house, which means you are knocking on someone's home at whatever time it is. The someone who answers is often in a housecoat. She hands you the towel with the expression of a person handing you the towel. The guests doing the most efficient temperature management aren't the ones in the expensive rooms. They're the ones who find the concrete stairwell on the shaded side of the U-shaped building, where the ground stays cool until almost noon, and they set their folding chairs there around 9 in the morning and stay until checkout, which they will push to 11 without asking. They have discovered the one cool spot the property offers for free, and they are not leaving it. The motel does not have a policy about this. It probably should. Your labour costs are low because your labour is related to you. Your spouse runs the diner griddle, your older child strips beds before school, and your younger child has been taught to answer the office phone in a voice that sounds older than it is. There is no payroll. There is dinner and a roof, and the understanding that the motel is a thing the whole family does, rather than a thing one of you leaves to go do. The arrangement is efficient. It is also the only arrangement anyone offered. The math works because every saved hour is a saved dollar, and every saved dollar stays in the family. You don't hire a night clerk. You are the night clerk. You sleep on the light side of sleep, which is a particular sleep style that isn't quite sleep and isn't quite awake and leaves you permanently capable of hearing a car pull off the highway at 2 in the morning from a dead rest. Your spouse can identify the sound of a toilet running in Unit 7 through a closed bedroom door. The children know not to run near the office window when guests are checking in. Everyone has a job. Nobody negotiated it. The books live in a ledger the size of a hardcover novel, in a drawer under the office counter, every entry in pencil because corrections happen. The revenue column and the expense column are not enemies exactly, but they are not friends. A good month, high summer, the road busy, every unit full 4 nights running, clears maybe $500 after supplies and the informal monthly fee to the local police, which gets filed under miscellaneous and never discussed further. A bad month is February. February is when you learn what you actually signed up for. Meanwhile, a well-run 20-unit property in a decent location clears $8,000 to $15,000 a year. That's roughly what a mid-level factory foreman makes, except the foreman goes home at 5. You do not go home at 5. You are already home. That distinction matters more at 11 at night than it does on paper. A housekeeper named Doris, not hired, just your cousin's wife who needed something to do and now cannot leave, moves unit to unit with a canvas cart that lists slightly to the left and has been listing that way for 3 years. She strips the chenille bedspreads with the flat efficiency of someone who long ago stopped reading into what she finds underneath them. She replaces the paper hat on the drinking glass. She lysolizes the bathroom in one continuous arc, the bottle held at shoulder height, eyes slightly closed. She does not rush. She does not have to. The room will be ready when it's ready, and you'll know because she'll leave the cart in front of the next unit and say nothing. The arrangement is efficient, permanent, and entirely unspoken. The younger child answers the phone. "Shady Rest, can I help you?" The voice is practiced. It has a telephone voice quality that took 6 weeks to develop and now deploys automatically, the way some people learn to wave without thinking. Guests ask about availability, ask about rates, sometimes ask whether there's a pool. The answer about the pool is always the same. It is delivered with the confidence of a child who has been told exactly what to say and has said it enough times that it now feels like truth. The family lives behind the office, in a unit that isn't rented out. The door between the family's rooms and the business has a latch that never quite catches. You can hear the office from bed. You can hear the highway from bed. In the summer, you can hear the ice machine and the pool pump, and occasionally the couple in Unit 4 who have been arguing since Tulsa. The walls do not distinguish between your side and the guest side. Sound makes no such commitment. By 1953, there are 26,000 properties like yours scattered along every highway artery in the country. Most of them are somebody's whole life. The ledger, the canvas cart, the child on the phone, the light sleep, all of it running simultaneously, all of it belonging to the same family. It's a small corporation, except the stockholders eat breakfast together and nobody has ever called a meeting. A motel 4 miles up the highway changed hands this spring, and the family that bought it is new to the country and entirely new to you. They came in cheap. They operate with relatives you keep seeing and never quite finish counting, and their rooms are full-on nights, yours are not. You have heard the name Patel attached to 2 other properties on this stretch already. You are watching the beginning of something you do not yet have a word for, from across a parking lot, with mild professional concern. The property they bought was a 16-unit strip on the cheap edge of town, the kind that had been limping along under an owner who stopped reinvesting sometime around 1948 and decided the chenille bedspreads could handle 1 more year. They handled approximately 4 more years. By the time the Patels arrived, the mattresses had achieved a valley depth that required some commitment to climb out of in the morning. The plumbing made a sound on Tuesdays no plumber had been able to diagnose. The Patels fixed the plumbing within a week. You have been watching how they operate. There is no front desk staff. There is no hired housekeeper. There is a man who checks guests in, a woman who cleans, a teenage boy who carries luggage nobody asked him to carry but who carries it anyway, like someone running a quiet, unannounced campaign. A woman you assume is an aunt moves between units with a mop bucket that seems to be perpetually in motion, pivoting at room 11 and heading back without breaking stride. You have never seen the bucket stop. The bucket doesn't stop. This is more or less your own operation, run at a slightly higher velocity. You have Doris on the rooms and your kid on the phone. They have what appears to be a full rotation. You are running a small business. They are running a small institution, and the institution has recently repainted its exterior trim a clean white that makes your trim look like it is making excuses. The new operation is cleaner, faster, and quietly relentless. The prices are similar to yours, maybe a quarter less on a weekday. The rooms are tighter, you walked past an open door once, but clean in the specific way that signals daily attention, not weekly. The bathroom smelled of the same Lysol yours does, which is, when you think about it, the smell of credibility in this industry. You think about it occasionally. You try not to think about it too often. They did not advertise. There was no announcement in the local paper, no handshake introduction at the gas station. The sign went up repainted. The no vacancy clicked on by 9 most Friday nights that spring, which you noticed because yours didn't click on until closer to 10:30. A man named Pravin, you got the name from the register at the diner, is the one who repainted the sign himself, on a stepladder, in the March wind, with a brush he later cleaned with turpentine on the front step while talking to someone in a language you don't speak. The other operators on this stretch have opinions, stated in the attached diner over coffee that costs a dime and is refilled without comment. The opinions are mostly about property values and road traffic, and whether the stretch can support another strong property. Some of the opinions are about other things, stated with the kind of careful vagueness that means they are not being careful at all. You nod in approximately the right places and go back to your eggs. What you actually know, professionally, the property is cleaner than it was. The vacancy rate is lower than it was. The family that runs it does not appear to sleep, or if they sleep in a rotation that keeps the office lit at every hour you have checked. This is not so different from your own operation, the one you described to your brother-in-law last Thanksgiving as a path to independence. He had described it back as a path to not sleeping. You had both been right. The Patels are at the beginning of something. You don't know the word for it yet, neither do they probably, but the rooms are full and the trim is white, and Pravin has already been seen on the roof checking the gutters with the expression of a man who has plans for the gutters. After the last car parks and the NO is lit on the sign, you sit down with a cash box and a ledger and find out whether today worked. The motel runs on cash, entirely, because no independent place on this highway can take the new credit cards the magazines keep advertising. So the money is real, physical, and stacked in front of you. And the arithmetic is honest in a way arithmetic usually isn't. You count it twice. The second count is not because you distrust the first. A full night, in theory, means 20 units. Say you fill 16. At $5 a room, that's $80. Minus the soap, minus the bleach, minus the linens you sent out Tuesday, minus the light bulb in Unit 7 that finally gave up around noon. You're not writing these down in any system a bank would recognize. You're writing them in a spiral notebook with a pen you found in Unit 12 and decided to keep. The ledger has columns. The columns have a take on tonight that you don't fully share. The money divides into 3 categories without anyone deciding this. There's the rent pile, which goes in the envelope and doesn't move. There's the operating pile, which shrinks whenever the ice machine makes a sound that isn't its usual sound. And there's the third pile, which is smaller than you'd like and represents the gap between running this place and owning it free and clear. You are in the owning it free and clear direction. You are going slowly. The mortgage has a concept of momentum that works only one way. Norma, who runs the front desk and also cleans rooms 9 through 14, and also made the coffee this morning that you're still drinking cold at 11 p.m., keeps a separate column in her own handwriting for the small cash courtesies, the salesman in Unit 4 who tipped $2 because you kept his Schlitz cold all week, the couple in Unit 11 who left 3/4 on the dresser for reasons that were never clarified. Norma marks these with a small star. She doesn't explain the star system. It has been running for 4 years and you have never asked. A well-run 20-unit property clears $8,000 to $15,000 a year, which is a respectable middle-class income earned entirely by making beds and doing math at midnight. No degree required. No commute. The office is 12 feet from your kitchen, which is either a luxury or a trap depending on whether a guest is knocking on the door at 3 in the morning because the shower drain is slow. The shower drain is always slow. There are also the other expenses the ledger handles quietly. The monthly arrangement with Officer Dowd, which is listed as miscellaneous and amounts to $22 in an envelope left in a specific spot at a specific time, it covers a great deal. It covers the couple in Unit 6 last Thursday, and the travelling man in Unit 2 who had a friend over who wasn't his wife and wasn't especially subtle about it. What it does not cover is a Tuesday in March when a different officer came by who didn't know about the envelope, and that cost $40 in an afternoon, and it's written in the ledger as equipment repair. The cash box closes. The ledger closes. You carry the rent envelope to the drawer and leave the operating pile where it is because tomorrow the linen service comes and they do not accept IOUs. The building is quiet now in a specific way. The ice machine drops a load of cubes into its tray down by Unit 8, loud as a small avalanche, and then goes back to its low hum. Somewhere down the row, a TV is still on. The sound comes through the wall like a conversation you weren't invited to. You turn off the desk lamp. The numbers were fine, not good. Fine is its own kind of good when you own the building they're attached to. Some mornings, a room is empty that should have been occupied until checkout, and a key that should be on its peg is somewhere on a highway 40 miles away. The guest paid in advance, usually, so a clean skip costs you only the key and the fob, which is exactly why the fob is the size of a brick. But sometimes the guest did not pay in advance, and then your only enforcement is a license plate number in a register you already know is fictional. You learn to take the cash up front. The register entry for an early departure looks like this. A name, probably not the right one. A plate number, probably accurate because cars don't lie even when people do. And a town of origin that is wherever the guest decided to be from when they picked up the pen. You fill out the line with the same ballpoint that Norma uses for the ledger, and it sits there in its column like a perfectly polished nothing. The register is less a legal document and more a creative exercise that everyone performs together in good faith, approximately. The key comes back maybe 80% of the time. The fob is stamped with the motel's name and the room number in raised letters, and it weighs enough that a person feels it in their pocket with every step, which is the entire point. The other 20% of keys are currently in a gas station parking lot in New Mexico, or in a coat pocket in Tulsa, or in a kitchen junk drawer next to a rubber band and 3 pennies from 1947. You keep a locksmith on a first-name basis. His name is Dale. Dale has a second home, conceptually. The whole system is loose, trusting, and held together by a fob the size of a brick. The skip out without paying is a different animal. It happens maybe twice a month at a busy property, once a month at a quiet one. You can't call the police, exactly, because the conversation would require you to produce a registration that contains a man named John Smith from Cincinnati driving a 1951 Ford, and the officer on the other end of the line has been John Smith from Cincinnati enough times himself to appreciate the irony. The plate might be real. You could file a report. You don't file a report. You adjust the nightly rate slightly upward and distribute the loss across everyone who does pay, which is how insurance works, except the insurance company is you, and the board of directors is also you, eating toast at the front desk at 6:30 in the morning. A man named Gerald checks in 3 Tuesdays in a row, pays cash each time, eats in the diner, tips a quarter, leaves a folded newspaper on the bed. On the 4th Tuesday he's gone by 4 in the morning, room empty, no key on the peg. The room is otherwise spotless. Gerald has made the bed. This bothers you more than the missing key. People who make the bed before they leave without paying are operating on a moral code you can't quite diagram. The room itself tells you almost nothing useful. The wastebasket is empty or nearly so, a crumpled receipt, a matchbook, a small cellophane wrapper from a package of something pharmaceutical that you don't examine too closely before dropping in the bin. The ashtray has been tapped clean against the trash can, which is a courtesy actually. The towels are on the floor, which is where they belong, and the chenille spread is pulled across the valley in the mattress in a way that suggests effort. The room smells of Clorox and starch and the faint petrochemical warmth of the carpet, the same as every other room at checkout, which is the point. It smells like nobody was here. Somebody was here. You strip the bed, start the wash, flip the mattress out of habit, and note the wear pattern on the carpet near the door. That small flattened oval where every guest has stood for a moment before deciding to go. It's the same oval in every room. You've stopped seeing it. You see it every day. A man flashes a badge in your office and asks about a guest, and the guest he is asking about stayed in room 9 2 nights ago under a name you both already suspect was invented. The newspapers have been full of a kidnapping that moved from motel to motel, and now every operator on every highway is part of a manhunt he did not volunteer for. You hand over the register. You describe the car. You realize, watching the officer write, that the same anonymity you sell as a feature is the anonymity he is fighting. The Greenlease case is in every paper by the fall of 1953. Bobby Greenlease, 6 years old, taken from his Kansas City school in September, a ransom demand of $600,000, the largest in American history at that point, paid in full, and the boy already dead. The killers move by car. They stop at motels. They register under names that are not their names, which is to say they do exactly what every third guest on Route 40 does on any given Tuesday. The FBI circles back through a dozen properties trying to reconstruct a route, and what they find is a paper trail that was never really a trail at all. Just a register full of addresses nobody verified and car descriptions written down after the car was already gone. The name you remember from room 9 is something like James Miller, or possibly John Miller. The handwriting is his, not yours, and he pressed light on the pen as though the ink was a commitment he wasn't ready to make. You told him the rate was $5. He paid cash. The car was a dark Ford, maybe a 5.1, maybe a 52. The kind of car every third man in America drives because it's the kind of car every third man in America can afford. You write this down for the officer. It doesn't help. You both know it doesn't help. On paper, the law wanted a real name, a real address, and a real plate number. And in most states, a false entry was technically a misdemeanor. The man in room 9 wrote J. Miller, Dayton, in careful block letters and drove off in a car that had never seen Dayton. The register was supposed to be a document. What it actually is a drawer full of handwriting samples from people who turned unusually creative under mild deadline pressure. Deputy Harlan sets his coffee cup on your counter without asking and starts copying plate numbers into his notebook with the weary energy of a man who has already decided none of them will pan out. He does this every few months. Sometimes it's a missing person. Once it was a stolen car. He never finds what he's looking for in your register, but he copies the plates anyway, because the plates are there and the notebook is there, and a man with a notebook needs something to put in it. By 1953, Edgar Hoover had already spent more than a decade calling motor courts camps of crime, and the Greenlease case didn't invent that association, it confirmed it, in 6-column headlines, for a country that had always found the roadside motel a nervous, suspicious, faintly thrilling idea. No doorman, no lobby, a room you could walk into straight from the parking lot with nobody watching. The anonymity had always been the point. In the fall of 1953 it became the problem, stated out loud by everyone at once. The wastebaskets don't help your case. The cleaning rotation turns up things. Benzodrine packaging, mostly, the little paper folds that prescription amphetamines came in, empty and folded neatly over themselves, as though the guest was tidy about everything, except the part where he drove 14 hours straight on a controlled substance. You don't report this. There's nothing to report it to. You throw it away, which is what you've always done, and by morning the basket is clean again and the room is ready and whatever story passed through it is gone. There's a negotiation built into all of this. The monthly arrangement with the local department means most of what happens in your rooms stays in your rooms, right up until it doesn't. A kidnapping investigation doesn't honour the arrangement. A Reader's Digest reporter doesn't honour the arrangement. A badge asking questions about room 9 on a Tuesday morning doesn't honour the arrangement either. The arrangement is for ordinary nights. This wasn't one. There is a new highway being surveyed a few miles north, wide and fast and designed to let a driver cross the state without stopping, and it is going to route every car you depend on around your motel instead of past it. You have heard that the chains are coming too, identical places with the same sign in every state, where a driver knows what he is getting before he slows down. You built your motel on a road that is about to become a quiet one. You can already see it from your office window. The interstate highway system was authorized in 1956. The law is already signed. The concrete is already being poured somewhere, and that somewhere is moving toward you. The surveys aren't a rumor. A county engineer named Pittman stopped for coffee last spring and left a paper napkin with a rough line drawn on it that he probably shouldn't have drawn. You put it in the desk drawer. You take it out occasionally. The line doesn't change. Holiday Inn opened its first location in Memphis in 1952, and by the end of the decade it has 100 of them, then 200, then more. The sign is green and yellow and exactly the same everywhere. The rooms are exactly the same everywhere. The towels, the beds, the rate card on the door, all the same, measured and replicated and franchised so efficiently that a salesman pulling off an exit in Tennessee is sleeping in an almost exact copy of the room he slept in last Tuesday in Ohio, which is the point. The uncertainty is gone. The entire value proposition is the removal of surprise, and it turns out a lot of America was very willing to pay for that. The chain version is clean, identical, and entirely without surprises. Your motel has surprises. Room 7 has a faucet that takes a moment. Room 12 gets the morning sun directly in the window at 6 and because of the way the lot sits. The mattress in room 4 has the valley, which regular guests know to sleep to one side of and new guests discover on their own. None of this is in a brochure. Your brochure is the sign, the parking lot, and the light in the office window at 11 at night. Margie, who has cleaned rooms here since the property opened, strips a bed with the calm efficiency of someone who has done a thing so many times it no longer has a name. She snaps the fresh sheet out and it floats down and she doesn't watch it land. She already knows where the corners are. She is faster than anyone you would hire away from a chain, and a chain would not hire her anyway because she does not wear a uniform that matches anything. She just does it correctly and moves on. The pool is still a draw. The sign out front has the little swimmer icon, and on a July afternoon there are 3 kids in it and 2 parents in aluminum chairs, and someone's transistor radio playing something tinny and distant. The chain down the exit ramp will also have a pool. Theirs will be newer. The paint on its bottom won't be chalking yet. You're already pricing what it would cost to resurface yours, and you already know you won't do it this year. The Green Book listed you, which brought travellers who couldn't stop anywhere else for 200 miles and who were reliable and quiet and grateful and whose money was as good as anyone's. And the other operators on your strip who didn't list never said anything about it directly. They just didn't list. The new chains will have a policy. The policy will be written down and it will say something that sounds reasonable and it will function the same way the unlisting did. You are not sure what to do with that information, so you put it next to the napkin with Pitman's line on it. The register is still filling every weekend. Summer is still summer. The ice machine still drops its load of cubes at 2 in the morning with a sound like a minor disaster, and the couple in room 9 still wakes up and one of them laughs and the other one doesn't. The neon still reads vacancy in red and yellow, and you can read it from the curve in the road a quarter mile out. For now, the curve in the road still leads here. For now, the cars still slow down. You spent the night in a 12-foot room behind a buzzing neon sign, signed a name that wasn't yours into a book nobody reads, paid $4 in advance, and slept in a valley that 3 years of strangers wore into the mattress. You carried a dented metal bucket to a machine that crashes ice at the dark for free. You drank from a glass wearing a small paper hat. None of them were mysterious, really. The owners who scrubbed the tub at 9 and checked you in at 10. The salesmen who kept their beer cold by standing arrangement. The families who only needed somewhere to stop that wasn't where they came from. The black travellers the Green Book sent 200 miles down the road who pulled up to a lit vacancy sign that went dark the moment they opened the car door. They kept the whole quiet machine standing, and the register never once wrote down their real names. So let your shoulders drop. Let the highway noise thin out to nothing. Let the neon outside somebody else's window buzz somebody else toward morning. Your bed has no valley. Your glass is not a germ study. Nobody in the next room is audible tonight, or at least not clearly. Sleep well.